James thought he had the perfect marriage until he found the divorce papers hidden in his wife's gym bag and realized she'd been planning his financial destruction for months. It was a Tuesday morning when everything shattered. James had been looking for his phone charger, the one Mary always borrowed and never returned. He checked her purse, her nightstand, and finally her gym bag tucked in the closet. His fingers brushed against something stiff between the yoga pants and water bottle. Papers. Legal papers. He pulled them out slowly, like diffusing a bomb. Petition for dissolution of marriage. The words blurred as his heart hammered against his ribs. But it wasn't just divorce papers. Clipped behind them was a detailed asset list. Their joint accounts, his business holdings, the investment properties, even his inheritance from his father. Every single thing he owned, itemized like a shopping list. And in the margins, Mary's handwriting. Transfer timeline, before he notices. James sank onto the closet floor, the papers trembling in his hands. They'd been married for 8 years. 8 years of building a life together, or so he thought. He remembered their last conversation that morning, Mary kissing his cheek, asking what he wanted for dinner, reminding him about their couple's massage appointment on Saturday. All of it a performance. All of it lies. But before we continue with this beautiful story, please kindly subscribe to this channel and comment where you are watching from, and also share below, what life or relationship challenge are you facing right now? Or what someone you know is going through? Don't forget to like this video as well. All these mean a lot to us. James sat there for 20 minutes, reading every word. The papers were dated 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks of her smiling at him over breakfast. 3 weeks of her curling up next to him in bed. 3 weeks of planning his destruction while pretending everything was fine. What kind of person does that? His phone buzzed. A text from Mary. Don't forget to sign those contractor forms in the study. Love you. The contractor forms. James's stomach dropped. He'd been so busy with work he'd barely glanced at them yesterday. Mary said they were for the kitchen renovation they'd been planning. He sprinted to his study, his hands shaking as he rifled through the papers on his desk. There they were, right where she'd left them. But now he read them carefully. These weren't contractor forms. They were transfer documents for their joint investment account, the one with nearly $400,000. His signature would give her sole control. The papers were designed to look boring, filled with legal jargon about property management and household expenses. If he hadn't found the divorce papers first, he would have signed without thinking. James felt ice water flood his veins. This wasn't just a divorce. This was a calculated heist. How long had she been planning this? How long had she been lying to his face? He pulled out his laptop and started digging. Their joint accounts showed nothing unusual at first glance. But when he looked closer, he saw it. Small transfers, $5,000 here, $3,000 there, always to an account he didn't recognize. Over the past 6 months, Mary had moved nearly $30,000 without him noticing. He'd been so focused on growing his construction business, working 70-hour weeks to secure their future, that he'd missed his wife systematically robbing him. His phone rang. Mary's smiling face filled the screen. James stared at it, his thumb hovering over the answer button. He could confront her right now, demand answers, ask her why. But something stopped him. If he confronted her now, she'd know he found the papers. She'd adapt, change her strategy. He'd lose whatever advantage he had. James declined the call. His mind was racing, but suddenly everything clicked into focus with crystal clarity. If Mary wanted to play games, he could play too. But he needed help. He needed someone who knew how to protect assets from a divorce. He needed a lawyer, and he needed one yesterday. Within 2 hours, James was sitting in a sleek downtown office across from Patricia Chen, one of the best divorce attorneys in the state. She was 50-something, sharp-eyed, and wore an expression that said she'd seen every dirty trick in the book. "Show me everything," Patricia said. James laid out the divorce papers, the transfer documents, the bank statements showing Mary's secret movements. Patricia's expression didn't change as she reviewed each page, but her pen moved rapidly across her legal pad. "Your wife is smart," Patricia finally said. "This is premeditated financial abuse. She's been positioning herself for months. If you'd signed these transfer documents, she could have cleaned out your accounts and filed for divorce the next day. By the time you realize what happened, the money would be long gone." "What can I do?" James's voice cracked. "We have joint accounts, joint properties. She has access to everything." Patricia leaned forward. "How much time do we have before she files?" "I don't know. The papers aren't signed yet. They're just drafted." "Then we move faster than she does. We can't stop her from filing for divorce, but we can protect your assets before she does. It's not illegal to protect what's yours, James. It's called being smart." If you're enjoying this story so far, pause and comment, "I am enjoying this story," below. Over the next week, James became a ghost in his own life. He went to work, came home, kissed Mary hello, asked about her day. Every interaction felt like swallowing broken glass, but he kept his face neutral. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, Patricia was working magic. First, they documented everything. Patricia hired a forensic accountant who uncovered the full scope of Mary's financial moves. The $30,000 was just the beginning. She'd also taken out a credit card in their joint names he didn't know about, racking up $20,000 in charges. Cash advances from their home equity line. Small loans against their investment properties. She'd been bleeding their finances dry so slowly and carefully that he'd never noticed. "She's creating debt in your name while hiding assets in hers," Patricia explained during one of their late-night strategy sessions. "When she files for divorce, she'll claim you're responsible for all this debt, while she's entitled to half of everything that's left. It's a classic financial abuse playbook." James felt sick. "I gave her access to everything because I trusted her. I thought that's what marriage was." "Marriage is trust," Patricia said quietly, "but what she's doing isn't marriage. It's fraud." They moved quickly. James opened new accounts Mary didn't know about. He transferred his business assets into a protected trust. He secured the investment properties with legal firewalls. He documented every suspicious transaction, every hidden account, every lie. And through it all, he came home every night and pretended nothing had changed. The hardest part was the intimacy. Mary still reached for him in bed, still kissed him goodbye in the mornings, still made his favorite dinners and laughed at his jokes. How could someone fake it all so perfectly? How could she touch him with the same hands that were signing documents to destroy him? One night, 2 weeks after finding the papers, Mary cuddled up next to him on the couch. They were watching some romantic comedy she'd picked. She rested her head on his shoulder, her fingers tracing patterns on his chest. "I'm so lucky to have you," she whispered. "You work so hard for us, for our future." James felt his throat close up. He wrapped his arm around her, pulled her close, and said absolutely nothing. What future was she talking about? The one where she took everything he'd worked for and left him with nothing? "James?" Mary's voice had a strange quality to it. "Are you okay? You've seemed distant lately." His heart stopped. Did she know? Had he slipped up somehow? "Just work stress," he managed. "The Henderson project is behind schedule. I'm dealing with supplier issues." Mary sat up, her eyes searching his face. For a moment, James saw something flicker there. Guilt? Fear? Calculation? Then she smiled, and it was gone. "You work too hard, baby. You need to relax more. Actually, I've been thinking, maybe we should take a trip, just the two of us, somewhere tropical, reconnect, you know?" James forced a smile. "That sounds perfect. Let me get through this project first." "Of course." Mary kissed his forehead. "I'm going to take a bath. Don't stay up too late." The moment she left the room, James grabbed his phone. A text from Patricia. "Detailed already. Everything is protected. She can't touch anything now. When you're ready to move forward, just say the word." James stared at the message. He had the power now. He could file first, catch Mary completely off guard. He could expose everything she'd done, every lie, every theft. He could destroy her the way she'd planned to destroy him. But something nagged at him, a detail he couldn't quite place. Mary's behavior had changed in subtle ways over the past few days. She was more attentive, more affectionate, and that comment about taking a trip, it felt wrong, like she was testing him somehow. James pulled up his secret monitoring app, another one of Patricia's suggestions. It tracked activity on their joint credit cards and accounts. His blood ran cold. Mary had booked tickets to the Cayman Islands, 2 one-way tickets, departing in 5 days. But there was only one name on the passenger list besides hers. David. David, her co-worker from the marketing firm, the one she'd mentioned casually over the years. Just a friend, she always said. We grab lunch sometimes. James's hands shook as he scrolled through more transactions. Hotel reservations, a car rental, a deposit on a beachfront condo. She wasn't just planning to divorce him and take his money. She was planning to run away with another man using his money. The bathroom door opened. Mary emerged in her silk robe, her hair wrapped in a towel, looking like the woman he'd fallen in love with 9 years ago at that coffee shop downtown. "Come to bed," she said softly. "I miss you." James looked at her, really looked at her. This woman who'd shared his bed, his dreams, his life. This woman who was planning to betray him in every way possible. This woman who could still make his heart ache even as she ripped it apart. "I'll be there in a minute," he said. Mary smiled and disappeared into their bedroom. James sat in the dark living room, his phone glowing in his hand. Patricia's message still on the screen. "When you're ready to move forward, just say the word." James took a deep breath. Then he typed, "Tomorrow. We move tomorrow. And I want to file for fraud charges too. She's not getting away with any of it." He hit send. Then he deleted all evidence of the conversation, cleared his browser history, and went to bed next to his wife. One last night of pretending. Tomorrow, everything would change. Mary was already asleep, or pretending to be. James lay there in the darkness, listening to her breathing, and wondered which version of her had ever been real. The woman who'd promised to love him forever, or the stranger who'd been methodically planning his destruction. He didn't sleep that night. He couldn't. Because in 12 hours, Mary was going to wake up to a nightmare of her own making. And James was going to make sure she faced every single consequence. The next morning, James woke before dawn. He showered quietly, dressed in his best suit, the one he wore to important business meetings, and left the house while Mary was still sleeping. He left a note on the kitchen counter. "Early meeting with investors. Don't wait up for dinner. Love you." Even now, even knowing everything, the lies came easily. Maybe Mary had taught him that. James was in his lawyer's office at 7 in the morning when Mary woke up. By 8, the papers were filed. By 9, their joint accounts were frozen. By 10, Mary's secret accounts were frozen too, thanks to Patricia's emergency fraud petition. By 11, James was back at work, sitting in a project meeting, pretending his entire life hadn't just detonated. His phone started buzzing around noon. 17 missed calls from Mary, 32 text messages that escalated from confused to angry to panicked. He didn't read any of them. Patricia had been clear. No contact, no communication. Everything goes through attorneys now. But at 2 in the afternoon, Mary showed up at his construction site. James was reviewing blueprints with his foreman when he saw her car screech into the parking lot. She got out like a storm system, her face flushed, her eyes wild. Several of his workers stopped what they were doing to watch. "James," her voice cracked across the site, "what the hell did you do?" He set down the blueprints carefully, his heart hammering but his face calm. This was it, the moment of truth. He walked toward her slowly, aware of all the eyes watching them. "I protected myself," he said quietly. "That's what I did." "Protected yourself?" Mary's laugh was shrill. "You froze our accounts. I can't access anything. My cards were declined at the grocery store. Do you have any idea how humiliating? How humiliating? James's voice dropped to a whisper, but it cut like a blade. You want to talk to me about humiliation, Mary? Really? Something flickered in her eyes. Fear, maybe, or recognition that she'd been caught. I don't know what you think is happening, she said, her voice shifting to something softer, more reasonable. But this is crazy. We can talk about this at home. Whatever's going on, we can fix it together. Together. James tasted the word like poison, like how we were going to fix things together in the Cayman Islands. Oh wait, that was you and David. My mistake. The blood drained from Mary's face. How did you? She stopped herself, but it was too late. How did I know? James pulled out his phone, showed her the screenshots Patricia had helped him compile. Flight records, hotel reservations, bank transfers, all of it. You really thought I wouldn't find out? You thought you could steal hundreds of thousands of dollars, file for divorce, and run away with your boyfriend, and I just let it happen? If you're enjoying this story so far, pause and comment, I am enjoying this story, below. Mary's expression cycled through shock, panic, and then something harder. Something calculating. You're twisting everything. David and I are just friends. That trip was... It was a work conference, and those transfers were for household expenses. You were never around, James. I was managing everything alone. Household expenses to a secret account? Divorce papers you hid in your gym bag? Transfer documents you disguised as contractor forms? James's voice was shaking now. I almost signed those papers, Mary. I almost gave you everything without even knowing it. How long were you planning this? How long have you been lying to my face? Tears spilled down Mary's cheeks, and for a second, James felt his resolve waver. This was the woman he'd loved, the woman he'd built a life with. But then he remembered the cold calculation in those hidden papers, the systematic way she'd been stealing from him, the plane tickets with another man's name. I want a divorce, Mary said, her voice breaking. That part is true. We haven't been happy for years, James. You know that. You're married to your business, not to me. I wanted to make sure I'd be okay after. Is that so wrong? You weren't trying to be okay, Mary. You were trying to destroy me. There's a difference. I never tried to destroy you. Her voice rose again. I just wanted what I deserved. I supported you for years while you built that business. I gave up my own career to be there for you. That money is as much mine as it is yours. Then why did you hide it? Why the secret accounts? Why the fake documents? Why David? James stepped closer. If you wanted a fair divorce, you could have just asked. But you didn't want fair, did you? You wanted everything. Mary's tears stopped as quickly as they'd started. Her expression hardened into something James had never seen before. Something ugly and raw. You know what your problem is, James? You think you're the victim here. Poor James, working so hard, providing for his family. But you were never there, not really. You know how many nights I ate dinner alone? How many birthdays you missed because of some project? How many times I tried to talk to you about us and you were too tired, too busy, too obsessed with your precious business. So you stole from me? That was your solution to feeling neglected? I didn't steal anything. I took what I earned by putting up with you for 8 years. Mary's face was flushed with anger now, all pretense of the hurt wife evaporating. And you want to know the truth about David? Yeah, we're together. Yeah, we were leaving. Because he actually sees me, James. He actually cares about what I want, what I need. He doesn't treat me like some accessory to his success story. The words hit James like physical blows, but he forced himself to stay calm. This was the real Mary. This was who she'd been hiding behind all those smiles and kisses and performances. Then you should have just left, James said quietly. You should have asked for a divorce like an adult, but instead you tried to rob me, and now you're going to face the consequences. Consequences? Mary laughed bitterly. You froze the accounts, James. I can't even buy groceries. You can't do that. That's financial abuse. No, Mary. What you did was financial abuse. What I did was protect myself from fraud. There's a legal difference, and my attorney is very clear on that. Mary's eyes narrowed. Attorney? You got an attorney? When? Right after I found your divorce papers, the ones you were planning to surprise me with. I just surprised you first. For a long moment, Mary just stared at him. Then she pulled out her phone. We'll see what my lawyer says about this. You can't freeze me out of my own money. Your money? James couldn't help the bitter laugh that escaped. Mary, I have documentation of every illegal transfer you made, every hidden account, every fraudulent transaction. You forged documents. You committed fraud. You think a judge is going to side with you? You're bluffing. Try me. Mary's hand trembled as she held her phone. I'll fight you on this, James. I'll take you for everything you have. You already tried that. It didn't work. James turned back toward his construction site. You need to leave now. You're trespassing on my work site, and from now on, all communication goes through our attorneys. This isn't over. Yeah, James said without turning around. It really is. He heard her car door slam, heard the screech of tires as she peeled out of the parking lot. His foreman, Tommy, walked over slowly. Boss, you okay? James realized his hands were shaking. I will be. That night, James sat alone in his apartment, the new place he'd rented after moving out of the house he'd shared with Mary. Patricia had advised him to leave before filing, to establish separate residence. Everything was strategic now, every move calculated, just like Mary had done to him. His phone buzzed, a message from Patricia. Her attorney reached out. They want to negotiate. She's scared, James. She knows we have her dead to rights on the fraud charges. James stared at the message. A part of him, the part that still remembered loving her, wanted to let it go, wanted to just end it cleanly and move on. But another part, the part that had been betrayed and used and nearly destroyed, wanted justice. He typed back, what are they offering? Clean split. She walks away with nothing but her personal belongings. No alimony, no asset division. In exchange, you don't press fraud charges. James laughed out loud. She steals hundreds of thousands of dollars and thinks she can just walk away? That's not all, Patricia's next message read. I did some more digging. David? He's married, 3 kids. His wife has no idea about Mary. And get this, Mary's been telling him that you were the cheater, that she was leaving an abusive marriage. She's been playing both of you. James felt the room spin. Every layer of Mary's lies just revealed more lies underneath. It was dizzying. How had he ever thought he knew this woman? Another message from Patricia. There's more. Remember those cash advances on the home equity line? Mary told the bank you approved them. She forged your signature. That's felony fraud, James. We're talking serious prison time if we pursue this. Prison. The word hung in the air. James imagined Mary in an orange jumpsuit, her perfect manicure ruined, her designer clothes gone, the woman who'd shared his bed for 8 years locked in a cell. His phone rang. Patricia's name on the screen. Don't answer yet, she said when he picked up. Just listen. You have all the power here. She can't touch your business, can't touch your assets. The prenup she tried to say was invalid? It's rock solid. She's going to walk away from this marriage with nothing. But the criminal charges? That's your call. I can file them tomorrow, or I can use them as leverage to make sure she never bothers you again. What do you want? James closed his eyes. What did he want? He wanted his 8 years back. He wanted the woman he'd married to have been real. He wanted to not feel this crushing weight of betrayal every time he breathed. I want the truth, he said finally. I want to know when it started, when she decided I was just a bank account to her, when David came into the picture. I want to know when my marriage actually ended, because clearly it was long before I found those papers. James, Patricia's voice was gentle. Does that really matter? Does knowing the exact moment she betrayed you change anything? Maybe not, but I need to hear her say it. I need to look her in the eye and hear the truth. Just once. No more performances. No more lies. Patricia was quiet for a moment. I can arrange a mediation session. You, her, me, her attorney. Completely off the record. You can ask your questions. But James, be prepared for the answers to hurt even more than what you already know. They can't hurt more than this. He was wrong. The mediation was set for 3 days later. James barely slept in the meantime. He kept replaying their marriage in his head, looking for the signs he'd missed. When had Mary changed? Or had she ever been who he thought she was? The mediation room was sterile and cold. A conference table, uncomfortable chairs, fluorescent lights that made everyone look half dead. Mary arrived with her attorney, a thin man in an expensive suit who looked deeply uncomfortable with his client's situation. Mary looked different, smaller somehow. Her designer clothes and perfect makeup couldn't hide the dark circles under her eyes. But when she met James's gaze, there was still defiance there, still pride. "Thank you for agreeing to this," her attorney began. "My client is willing to accept a clean separation with no asset division if we can resolve this amicably and avoid any criminal proceedings." "I want to ask her some questions first," James said. Patricia nodded. Mary's attorney looked nervous but gestured for her to answer. James leaned forward. "When did it start? When did you decide to do this to me?" Mary's jaw tightened. "I don't know what you—" "Don't." James's voice was hard. "No more lies, Mary. Not here. Not now. I'm offering you a way out of prison time, but only if you give me the truth. When did you start planning to rob me?" The room was silent. Mary's fingers drummed on the table, a nervous habit James had never noticed before. Or maybe he had and just never paid attention. "About a year ago," she said finally. Her voice was barely a whisper. "That's when I decided I couldn't stay married to you anymore." A year. James felt the words like a punch. "And David?" "6 months ago. We met at a conference. He was everything you weren't. Attentive, present. He actually wanted to know about my day, my thoughts, my dreams. Not just how his business was doing. So you decided to steal my money and run away with him." "It wasn't like that," Mary's eyes flashed. "I wasn't stealing. I was taking what I deserved for wasting the best years of my life on someone who didn't even see me. I saw you every day, Mary. I came home to you every night." "No, you didn't," her voice broke. "You came home to a house, to a bed, to someone who cooked your meals and did your laundry and kept your life running while you chased your dreams. But you never actually saw me. You never asked what I wanted, what I needed. You just assumed I'd always be there, waiting for you to finally have enough time for our marriage." James felt something crack inside him, because there was truth in her words. He had been absent. He had prioritized his business over his wife, but that didn't excuse what she'd done. "That still doesn't explain the fraud," he said. "The forged suggestions, the hidden accounts, the systematic theft. If you wanted a divorce, you could have just asked for one." Mary looked down at her hands. When she spoke again, her voice was different, colder. "Because I knew you'd fight me for every penny. I knew you'd make it impossible, and I wanted to make sure I had enough to start over. Enough to be free." "Free?" James laughed bitterly. "You committed multiple felonies, Mary. You're not free. You're one phone call away from being arrested." Her attorney shifted uncomfortably. "Mr. Hayes, I think we should focus on the settlement." "I'm not done." James's eyes stayed locked on Mary. "What about David's wife? His kids? Did you tell him about them, or was he playing you the same way you were playing me?" Mary's face paled. "How do you—" "I know everything, Mary. That's what you don't seem to understand. I know about David's family. I know he told his wife he was at business conferences while he was with you. I know you told him I was abusive to justify leaving me. I know every single lie you told, to everyone." Tears streamed down Mary's face now, but James felt no satisfaction in them. just emptiness, just the hollow ache of a marriage that had been dead longer than he'd realized. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," Mary whispered. It spiraled, and I couldn't stop it." "You could have stopped it at any time. You chose not to." The truth of that statement hung in the air. Mary's attorney cleared his throat. "Can we discuss the settlement terms now?" James looked at Patricia. She gave him a small nod. It was time to end this. "Here's what's going to happen," James said. "Mary signs over all rights to our joint assets. She takes her personal belongings and nothing else. No alimony, no support, nothing. In exchange, I don't press criminal charges. She walks away free, but with nothing." "That's not fair," Mary's voice cracked. "I have nothing, James. No job, no savings, nowhere to go. You're leaving me with nothing." "You left yourself with nothing. The moment you decided to forge my signature, the moment you committed fraud. That was your choice, Mary, not mine." Mary's attorney leaned over, whispered something to her. Her face crumpled as she nodded. "Fine," she said. "I'll sign." The papers were drawn up. Mary signed them with shaking hands. When it was done, she looked up at James one last time. "I did love you, you know, at the beginning, before everything got so complicated." James stood up. "If that's true, then I'm sorry you forgot how." He walked out of that room and didn't look back. Patricia followed him into the hallway, where James finally let himself lean against the wall, his legs weak. "It's over," Patricia said. "You're free." But James didn't feel free. He felt hollowed out, gutted, like everything he'd believed about his life had been a lie. And now he was left standing in the ruins, trying to figure out who he actually was without it. His phone buzzed, a text from his younger sister Maya. "Mom told me what happened. I'm so sorry. I'm here if you need me." James stared at the message. Then he texted back, "Can I crash at your place for a few days? I don't want to be alone right now." Maya's response was immediate. "Already making up the guest room. Come over whenever." James pocketed his phone and started walking. Behind him, through the conference room door, he could hear Mary crying. Once upon a time, that sound would have destroyed him, would have made him want to fix whatever was wrong, protect her from whatever pain she was feeling. Now it was just noise, just the sound of someone else's consequences catching up with them. He'd done what he came here to do. He'd gotten his answers. He'd protected himself from complete destruction. He'd even walked away with his business and his assets intact. So why did it feel like he'd lost everything anyway? 3 months later, James was sitting in Maya's backyard, watching his nephew's 6th birthday party when he saw her. Not Mary. He'd blocked her number, changed all his routines, rebuilt his life specifically to never have to see her again. No, this was someone different, someone new. She was Maya's friend from her book club, tall, dark-haired, with an easy laugh that carried across the yard. Her name was Rebecca, and she was helping Maya carry out the birthday cake, singing off-key and making James's nephew giggle. "Stop staring," Maya said, sitting down next to him. "You're being obvious." James felt his face heat up. "I wasn't." "You were." Maya smiled, but it was gentle. "It's okay to notice someone, you know. The divorce is final. You're allowed to move forward." "It's too soon." "Says who? You've been living in my guest room for 3 months, James. You've rebuilt your business, started therapy, worked through your anger. At some point, you have to start living again instead of just surviving." James watched Rebecca help his nephew blow out the candles, watched how naturally she connected with the kids, how easy she made everything seem. It had been so long since anything felt easy. "I don't know if I can trust anyone again," he admitted quietly. "How do I know I won't miss the signs again? How do I know someone isn't just performing for me while planning to destroy me behind my back?" Maya squeezed his shoulder. "You don't. That's the scary part. But James, you can't let Mary steal your future along with everything else she took. That's letting her win." Before James could respond, Rebecca walked over. Up close, she had kind eyes and a genuine smile that made something in his chest loosen just slightly. "You must be the famous James," she said, holding out her hand. "Maya talks about you constantly, the brilliant builder who's too stubborn to accept help from anyone." James laughed despite himself. "That sounds about right. Well, I run a nonprofit that builds affordable housing. We're always looking for contractors who give a damn about the work and not just the profit margin. Maya suggested I talk to you, if you're interested." It was business. Just business. Nothing scary about that. James found himself nodding. "I'd like that. Actually, I've been thinking about doing more community-focused work, getting back to why I started building in the first place." Rebecca's smile widened. "Perfect. How about we grab coffee sometime next week? I can show you what we're working on, see if it's a fit." Coffee would be good. After she walked away to help with cleanup, Maya elbowed him. "See? That wasn't so hard." But James's heart was pounding. Because it was hard. Every part of him wanted to retreat, to protect himself, to never risk feeling that kind of pain again. But Maya was right. He couldn't let Mary's betrayal define the rest of his life. Over the next few weeks, James met Rebecca for coffee, then lunch, then dinner. They talked about buildings and blueprints, about her nonprofit and his business. It was easy and comfortable and terrifyingly new all at once. One evening, after reviewing plans for a community housing project, Rebecca set down her coffee cup and looked at him seriously. "Can I ask you something personal?" James tensed. "Sure." "Maya told me a little about your divorce. Not details, just that it was really bad. And I've noticed you flinch every time I mention anything about trust or partnership or future plans. So I guess my question is, are you actually ready for this? Because I really like you, James, but I'm not interested in being someone's practice run while they figure out if they can trust again." The honesty hit James like cold water. He could lie, could say he was fine, totally over it, ready to move forward. But Rebecca deserved better than that, and maybe so did he. "I don't know if I'm ready," he said honestly. "My ex-wife spent a year systematically planning to destroy me financially while pretending everything was fine. She forged my signature, stole money, had a whole secret life I knew nothing about. And the worst part is that I missed all the signs. I was so focused on building my business that I didn't see my marriage falling apart. So yeah, I flinch, because I'm terrified of making the same mistakes again." Rebecca was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached across the table and took his hand. The touch was simple, but it sent electricity through James's entire body. "Thank you for being honest. That takes courage." She squeezed his hand gently. "I can't promise I won't hurt you, James. Nobody can promise that. But I can promise I'll never lie to you. I'll never pretend to be something I'm not. And if something is wrong between us, I'll tell you instead of hiding it until it explodes." James felt his eyes sting. "How do I know that? How do I trust that?" "You don't, not at first. Trust isn't a switch you flip. It's something you build, slowly, with time and consistency and proof. I'm willing to build that with you, if you are. But it has to be a choice you make, to risk it again even though you're scared. Because the alternative is living the rest of your life behind walls Mary built for you." James thought about that, really thought about it. Mary had taken so much from him, his marriage, his trust, his confidence in his own judgment. But she didn't get to take his future too. She didn't get to turn him into someone who was too afraid to love again. "Okay," he said, "let's try. But I need you to be patient with me. I'm going to mess this up sometimes. I'm going to be suspicious when I shouldn't be. I'm going to need reassurance more than I should. This isn't going to be easy." Rebecca smiled. "Good relationships never are, but they're worth it. And James, you're worth it." If you're enjoying this story so far, pause and comment, "I am enjoying this story," below. Over the next 6 months, James slowly learned what a healthy relationship looked like. Rebecca didn't hide her phone or have secret accounts. When she said she was working late, James could stop by and see her actually working. When she was upset about something, she talked about it instead of letting it fester. When James struggled with trust issues, she didn't get defensive. She talked him through it, showed him proof when he needed it, and never made him feel crazy for being cautious. It was different than anything he'd had with Mary. Quieter, more honest, less performance and more partnership. And slowly, James felt the walls around his heart start to crumble. There were hard days too. Days when James would catch himself watching Rebecca's face for signs of deception. Days when he'd check their bank statements obsessively, looking for transfers that weren't there. Days when the trauma of what Mary had done would crash over him like a wave, leaving him gasping and afraid. But Rebecca never wavered. She gave him space when he needed it. She provided reassurance when he asked for it. She never made him feel like his fears were unreasonable, even when they were. And most importantly, she kept showing up, day after day, proving through her actions that not everyone was like Mary. James's therapist, Dr. Martinez, had warned him this would be the hardest part. Healing isn't linear, she'd said during one of their sessions. You'll have good days and bad days. Days when you feel like you've moved on completely, and days when the betrayal feels fresh all over again. That's normal. That's part of the process. How long does it take? James had asked. Until I stop looking over my shoulder? Until I can trust someone without constantly waiting for them to betray me? Dr. Martinez had smiled gently. There's no timeline, James. But what I can tell you is that every day you choose to be vulnerable again, every day you choose connection over protection, you're healing. You're taking your power back from what Mary did to you. One night, almost a year after his divorce was finalized, James and Rebecca were having dinner at her apartment when his phone buzzed. A number he didn't recognize. He almost ignored it, but something made him check. The message was from Mary. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I wanted you to know I'm in therapy, working through my issues. I'm sorry for what I did to you. I know sorry doesn't fix it, but I needed to say it anyway. I hope you're doing well. You deserve better than what I gave you. James stared at the message for a long moment. Rebecca noticed his expression change. Everything okay? James showed her the message. Rebecca read it carefully. How do you feel about that? She asked. I don't know. Part of me wants to ignore it. Part of me wants to tell her it's too little, too late. Part of me is glad she's getting help. Part of me doesn't believe a word of it. Do any part of you want to respond? James thought about it. Did he? What would he even say? Mary had destroyed everything they'd built together. She'd betrayed him in ways he was still processing with his own therapist. But holding on to anger was exhausting, and he was so tired of carrying it. He typed carefully. I appreciate you telling me. I hope therapy helps you. I've moved on with my life, and I need you to respect that by not contacting me again. I wish you well, but our chapter is closed. He showed Rebecca before sending it. She nodded. That's good. Firm but not cruel. You're setting a boundary while still acknowledging her effort. James hit send, then blocked the number. It felt final in a way the divorce papers hadn't, like he was finally closing that chapter of his life for good. How did I get so lucky to find you? James asked Rebecca. She laughed. You didn't find me. Maya literally forced us into the same space and refused to let you hide anymore. But I'm glad she did. Me too. James reached across the table and took her hand. I know I'm not always easy to be with. I know my baggage from Mary still affects us sometimes. But I want you to know, I'm working on it. I'm getting better. And you make me want to be better. Rebecca's eyes softened. James, you're not broken. You're healing. There's a difference. And I don't need you to be perfect. I just need you to be honest with me, to keep trying, to keep choosing us even when it's scary. That's all I've ever asked. 2 years after finding those divorce papers in Mary's gym bag, James stood in his rebuilt office. The construction company had tripled in size thanks to his partnership with Rebecca's nonprofit, and looked at his reflection in the window. He barely recognized the man staring back at him. This James was stronger, wiser, more careful, yes, but not broken. He'd survived the worst betrayal he could imagine and come out the other side. He'd protected himself, gotten justice, and learned to trust again. He'd built something new from the ruins of his old life. His phone buzzed. A text from Rebecca. "Dinner tonight? I have something important I want to ask you." James smiled. There was a time when a message like that would have filled him with anxiety. What did she want to ask? Was something wrong? Was she leaving? But now he just felt curiosity and anticipation. Because Rebecca had proven herself over 2 years of honesty and consistency. She'd earned his trust the hard way, through time and truth, and never once making him regret taking the risk. He texted back, "Can't wait. I love you." 3 little words that had once felt like a trap. Now they felt like freedom. James thought about Mary sometimes, wondered how she was doing, if therapy had helped, if she'd ever really understood what she'd done. But mostly he didn't think about her at all. She was a chapter in his story, not the whole book. The real story, the important one, was what he was building now. Not just buildings and businesses, but a life. A real life, with real trust, and real love that didn't require performance or pretense. Patricia had called him a few months back, asked how he was doing. "You know what the best revenge is?" she'd said. "Living well, building something better, proving that what they did to you didn't define you." James had laughed. "Is that legal advice or life advice?" "Both. It's the only kind I give." That night, over dinner, Rebecca reached across the table and took his hand. "So, remember how I said I had something important to ask you?" James's heart jumped, but not with fear, with hope. "I'm listening. I got offered a project in Portland. It's huge, a full community development, dozens of affordable housing units, exactly the kind of work we've both been dreaming about. The nonprofit wants to open a branch there, and they want me to run it." James felt his stomach drop. "That's amazing, Rebecca. I'm so proud of you." "I haven't said yes yet, because here's the thing. I don't want to do it without you. I want us to take this leap together, build something incredible together. But I need to know if you're in, really in, not just with me, but with us, with a future that's bigger than protecting yourself from the past." James looked at this woman who'd helped him learn to trust again, who'd been patient with his fears and honest about her feelings, who'd never once made him feel like he was too broken to love. "Yes," he said without hesitation. "I'm in. Let's build something incredible." Rebecca's smile lit up the entire restaurant. "Really? You're sure? Because this is big, James. New city, new start, full partnership, business and personal. That's a lot of trust." "I know, and a couple years ago I couldn't have done it, but you've shown me what real partnership looks like. Not performance, not pretense, just 2 people choosing each other, every day, honestly. So yeah, I'm sure. More sure than I've been about anything in a long time." They moved to Portland 3 months later. The community housing project was challenging and exhausting, and exactly what James needed. He poured himself into it, not because he was running from anything, but because he was building towards something. On the day they broke ground, James stood next to Rebecca, watching the first excavator dig into the earth. This project would house 50 families, 50 fresh starts, 50 chances for people to rebuild their lives. "You know what's funny?" James said. "What's that?" "If Mary hadn't betrayed me, I'd probably still be chasing commercial contracts and bigger profit margins. I'd have never slowed down enough to realize I'd lost myself. In a weird way, her worst act forced me to become someone better." Rebecca squeezed his hand. "That's growth, James. You took something terrible and used it to transform yourself. That's not luck. That's choice." James thought about that word, choice. Mary had made her choices: to lie, to steal, to betray. He couldn't control that, but he could control his own choices. To protect himself, yes, but also to risk again, to trust again, to build again. "I choose this," James said, turning to Rebecca. "I choose us. I choose building instead of destroying. I choose moving forward instead of staying stuck in anger. I choose to believe that not everyone is like Mary, and that love doesn't have to end in betrayal." Rebecca kissed him, right there on the construction site, with the workers cheering and the excavator rumbling and the future stretching out ahead of them like an empty blueprint waiting to be filled with something beautiful. That night, James lay in their new apartment in Portland, Rebecca asleep beside him, and thought about everything that had led him here. The pain of finding those divorce papers, the betrayal, the anger, the long process of rebuilding himself from the inside out, the risk of loving again. It had all been worth it, not because the pain had some grand purpose, but because he'd refused to let it be the end of his story. He'd survived the worst thing he could imagine, and he'd come out the other side stronger, wiser, and capable of loving more deeply than he'd ever thought possible. His phone buzzed one last time, a message from Maya. "Proud of you, little brother. You really did it. You took the worst thing that ever happened to you and turned it into something beautiful. That takes real strength." James smiled in the darkness. "Yeah," he thought, "I really did." He'd suspected his wife was planning a divorce, so he'd quickly moved all his assets to protect himself. 3 weeks later, when Mary tried to execute her plan, she found herself facing the consequences of her own betrayal. But the real story wasn't about revenge or justice. It was about what James had built afterward. He'd protected his assets when Mary tried to destroy him. But more importantly, he'd protected something else: his capacity for trust, for love, for building instead of just defending. He'd chosen not to let betrayal turn him into someone unrecognizable. He'd chosen to keep his heart open, even when it was terrifying. James closed his eyes, Rebecca's hand warm in his, and felt something he hadn't felt in years: peace. Not the peace of forgetting, but the peace of moving forward. The peace of knowing that what happened to him didn't define him. His response to it did. And in that response, James had found something Mary's betrayal could never touch: the strength to trust again, the courage to love again, and the wisdom to know the difference between protecting himself and closing himself off from the world. The construction site would open in 8 months. 50 families would have homes. James and Rebecca would build their life together, brick by brick, choice by choice, day by day. And somewhere in another city, Mary would continue her own journey, whatever that looked like. But James didn't need to know about that anymore. He'd moved on. Really, truly moved on. Not by forgetting what happened, but by refusing to let it be the defining moment of his life. He was James Hayes, builder, survivor, and finally, after everything, he was ready to be one more thing: someone who believed in love again. The journey of James Hayes teaches us profound truths about betrayal, resilience, and the courage to rebuild after devastation. His story isn't just about a man who protected his assets from a scheming spouse. It's a masterclass in how we respond when life delivers its cruelest blows. Let's explore the deeper lessons embedded in this narrative that can transform how we approach trust, self-protection, and healing. Trust must be earned, not assumed. One of James's biggest mistakes was operating under the assumption that marriage automatically equals complete, unquestioned trust. He gave Mary unrestricted access to everything: accounts, documents, decisions, without any safeguards, simply because they were married. This teaches us that trust, even in intimate relationships, should be built on consistent actions over time, not on titles or legal contracts. Real trust comes from watching how someone behaves when they think nobody's watching. It comes from consistency between words and actions. It comes from transparency, not secrecy. James learned the hard way that love doesn't mean abandoning all caution. Healthy relationships include appropriate boundaries, mutual accountability, and open communication about finances and major decisions. Trusting someone completely doesn't mean being naive about human nature or ignoring warning signs. Protect yourself without becoming cynical. James's story shows us the delicate balance between self-protection and cynicism. After discovering Mary's betrayal, he had every reason to never trust anyone again. He could have built walls so high that no one could ever hurt him. Instead, he chose a different path. He protected himself legally and financially while keeping his heart open to the possibility of love. This is the crucial lesson. Protecting yourself doesn't mean shutting yourself off from the world. It means being wise, setting boundaries, doing your due diligence, and watching for red flags, but still choosing vulnerability with people who prove themselves trustworthy. James didn't let Mary's betrayal turn him into a bitter, suspicious person. He went to therapy, processed his pain, and slowly learned to trust again with Rebecca, who consistently demonstrated honesty and transparency. The key is discernment, not blanket distrust. Some people will betray you, others won't. Your job is to be wise enough to tell the difference and brave enough to risk connection with those who earn it. Betrayal reveals character, both theirs and yours. How we respond to betrayal says everything about who we are. Mary's actions revealed her true character: selfish, calculating, dishonest. But James's response revealed his character too. He didn't seek revenge. He didn't destroy Mary just because he could. He protected himself, yes, and ensured she faced legal consequences for fraud, but he didn't pursue criminal charges that would have sent her to prison. This teaches us that when someone betrays us, we face a choice. Do we become like them, or do we respond from our own values? James chose justice over vengeance, protection over destruction. He took the high road not because Mary deserved it, but because he deserved to be the kind of person who doesn't lower himself to match someone else's moral level. Your response to betrayal doesn't change what happened, but it absolutely changes who you become afterward. Choose wisely, because you'll have to live with the person you decide to be. Don't ignore your intuition. Looking back, James realized there were signs: Mary's emotional distance, her secretiveness, the way she'd changed subtly over time. He'd been so focused on his business that he'd ignored these signals. This teaches us a vital lesson about intuition. That nagging feeling that something's wrong usually exists for a reason. We live in a world that often tells us to ignore our gut feelings, to give people the benefit of the doubt, to not be paranoid. But there's a difference between paranoia and intuition. Paranoia is fear without evidence. Intuition is your subconscious processing evidence you haven't consciously acknowledged yet. When something feels off in a relationship, whether romantic, business, or friendship, pay attention, investigate, ask questions. Don't ignore that inner voice just because you're afraid of what you might discover. Presence matters more than provision. Mary's accusations cut deep because they contain truth. James had been physically present, but emotionally absent. He'd worked himself to exhaustion building his business, believing that providing financially was how he showed love. But Mary needed more than money. She needed connection, attention, emotional intimacy. This doesn't excuse Mary's fraud and betrayal. Nothing justifies that level of deception. But it teaches us that relationships die from neglect long before they die from malice. You can't build a marriage on financial provision alone. People need to feel seen, heard, valued, and prioritized. If you're so busy chasing success that you neglect the people you're supposedly working for, you're undermining the very relationships you're trying to support. Success means nothing if you're successful and alone. Presence, real, engaged, emotionally available presence, is irreplaceable. James learned this lesson painfully, but he didn't make the mistake with Rebecca. He built their relationship on communication, time together, and mutual emotional investment. Healing is a choice you make daily. Perhaps the most powerful lesson from James's story is about healing. He didn't wake up one day magically over his trauma. He chose healing through therapy, through allowing himself to grieve, through accepting support from his sister, through taking small risks with Rebecca even when he was terrified. Healing isn't passive. It's not something that just happens with time. Time alone doesn't heal anything. It's what you do with that time that matters. James actively worked on his issues. He talked about his fears. He practiced vulnerability in small doses. He celebrated progress and forgave himself for setbacks. He chose, day after day, to move forward rather than stay stuck in anger and bitterness. When life breaks you, you face a choice. Let the breaking define you, or let it refine you. James chose refinement. He took his brokenness to therapy, processed it, learned from it, and emerged stronger and wiser. That's not luck. That's courage and intentional work. The ultimate lesson: your past doesn't own your future. James's story ends with hope because he refused to let Mary's betrayal write the rest of his life story. She got to write one chapter, a painful, destructive chapter, but James reclaimed the pen and wrote the chapters that followed. This is the ultimate truth. What happens to you matters, but it doesn't define you. How you respond defines you. James was betrayed, yes, but he was also resilient, wise, brave, and capable of loving again. He didn't let the worst thing that happened to him become the only thing that mattered about him. Your story isn't over. Whatever betrayal, loss, or pain you've experienced is part of your story, but it's not the whole story. You still have chapters to write. You still have choices to make. You still have the power to build something beautiful from the ruins. James teaches us that surviving betrayal isn't just about protecting your assets or getting justice. It's about protecting your humanity, your capacity for love, your ability to trust again. It's about refusing to become bitter, closed off, or defined by someone else's worst actions. That's the real victory. That's the real strength. And that's a lesson worth remembering when life inevitably breaks your heart.